we saw the avalanche coming and we were like, right, if we don't niche down now or start to move towards niching down, we're going to just be lost in a sea of sameness. As a company less than 8 months old, we were booking a crazy amount of calls and it's all coming from content, but we had an extremely low conversion rate. And naturally, as any business would, we were then kind of like, well, why is this? The world moves very fast, especially in AI. What works today is going to be completely different tomorrow. And everyone wants to stay on track. So if someone invests in working with us to build this infrastructure, they are very, very, very much aware that this thing evolves over time.
Bjion, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I want to jump straight into your tagline on LinkedIn. Book more meetings without growing your headcount using AI. Unpack that for me.
Yeah, so it came about pretty early on in the start of our journey. I think that when we were talking to a lot of people, kind of reading between the lines, and we tried a lot of taglines. I can't remember the others, but then we kind of just realized that the reason why people were getting on calls with us over a traditional lead gen agency or whatever was more so just because what they were trying to do was essentially that was just to book more calls, but without actually growing their headcount. Because like to them, it was a case where agencies are already people intensive businesses and they didn't want to add more people because then it means managing more people and more people. And because we were so focused on AI and using AI and automating sales, like it was just an obvious fix to that problem because AI can then automate a lot of the processes, which they didn't want to do or would have to hire someone to do. So that's kind of how it came about.
Got you. And then from there, I was wondering if you can kind of jump into how your business model delivers that, because doing research on how you guys work, it's a bit different from how most AI SDRs work, where it's just the tech, and you're a bit of this blend of like this one-on-one support with the agency, with the AI behind it. So I was wondering if you can unpack that for me.
Yeah, so I think that there's enough lead gen agencies out there to probably service every business on earth. And we were kind of like, well, where do we sit in all of this? Um, because I mean, we could be another lead gen agency, but then it's a case where we're not really any different to anyone else. And I think then what we looked at in terms of what we actually like doing, and it's the building of the infrastructure of people, but most importantly, actually teaching them how to do it. So, what a traditional agency would do is to run the whole system for you. And at the end of the engagement, they still keep everything. I think if you look at the growing trend of what's happening between with agencies at the moment, almost look at any survey and in terms of what their needs are or what their plans are, all of them have a high priority when it comes to integrating AI into their own sales processes, or into their own process and building it in house. So we were kind of looking at the traditional lead gen model, and we were kind of like, this isn't going to work because people are always going to want to build it in house, or at least that's where the trend is going. And so, how can we help these customers to do exactly that? And from that was born the direction that we wanted to go into, which was okay, we will build this for you, or we will teach you how to do it. And if there's ever a time where you just simply don't have the time to actually run this system that we've now built for you, we can also jump in if you want us to and run this system for you. But it is actually your system, it's something that you own. And I think why this works now and it didn't work necessarily 5 years ago is that because we're in like this period of time where no one necessarily knows where the winner is in AI yet. It's just too early to know. And so everyone has their own setup, their own unique setup. And so everyone's going to want to build it in their own specific way to fit in with their own specific tools that they use. And I think that's where we come in with the knowledge that we have to be able to say, okay, yeah, don't use this in this instance, use that in that instance. And this is born out of trial and error going back all the way to like 2022. when ChatGPT wasn't even a thing. It's probably about 9 months before ChatGPT even came out. But the parent company OpenAI released DALI, which is a software which allows you to go from text to images. We take that for granted for today, but that was like the first introduction to AI, little generative AI. And that's where we started. And that's where we started to learn, okay, this is the way that things are going for everyone.
Yeah, I'd love to jump into exactly that. So obviously you guys launched in July of 2023, if I'm correct. Could you maybe, you're talking about this process of trial and error. Could you maybe point out the differences between what you were delivering in July of 2023 and like what your tech stack looked and what you recommended compared to now?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we were extremely wide in our offering. It was more just like an AI automation agency. But then we were kind of like, we saw the avalanche coming and we were like, right, if we don't niche down now or start to move towards niching down, we're going to just be lost in a sea of sameness. And so that became the first period or era in terms of like how we niche down. So the first projects we were doing was stuff like building a tool for like an M&A firm to be able to find companies to acquire or whatever. And it was yeah, super wide. And then the next phase was that, okay, let's actually try this or niching down into lead generation. And then what we found is, okay, we're now actually really good at building the infrastructure and everything that goes into the lead generation process. Let's actually knuckle down into that. And then it came a case where like we were kind of like, okay, but now we're kind of again the same as everyone else. So how do we go even deeper with this? And that's where we nailed on the coaching part of like actually having a program where we teach people how to build this software, this infrastructure, and then run it themselves.
Interesting. So if you're to kind of like break down your pillars of what your offer is, you've got the education, you've got the infrastructure. Is there anything else there that I'm missing out right now?
Yeah, I think it is that two parts, is the coaching and the infrastructure. So we have a playbook on how to set up campaigns which typically work for 90% of people. For example, post content. And then once you've posted that content, have an AI automation process which scrapes through your likes and comments and then outreaches to those individuals who liked or commented, sparking conversation. That's the easiest way to get qualified leads. Or it's a case where you might want to reach out to a company who's just posted an active, a job looking for a web designer. Let's say you're a web developer. That would then make sense to outreach them because you could help them develop the project that they're designing for example. And all of this stuff can kind of be done on autopilot so that we give them the playbook to actually be able to create all of this. The next part of this is actually the coaching part. And this is the part where we're kind of like, we adapt it to them because every business is different. And it's a case, I know that sounds so cliche, but I think once you see this side of the table, you understand that like something as small as using HubSpot instead of Pipedrive, or like um using an outreach software instead of sorry, maybe you're trying to do a specific task, and even the knowledge of from our side of knowing, okay, you don't use ChatGPT for that, you use Claude for that, which is another ChatGPT competitor. And all of these nuances were just so important that we then knew that those were just going to be the two pillars of the business.
What percentage of companies actually take on the education and the training and the consultation you give and go away and do it themselves? And what percentage of companies just see that the education you're providing is enough and are like, fuck it, just run it for us?
It's changed over time, and it's more so because of our messaging, I would say, because now we're far more focused on the education piece. I would say that before it was a lot of done, so people wanting us to run it for them. Not to say that that doesn't still happen, but I think we're far more focused on people, on teaching people how to do it, and then running it themselves. So at the in the beginning, I think it was probably actually, no, all right, let me rewind a little bit because I want to explain another part to this, which makes it a little bit more explains the journey. So around this time last year, as a company less than 8 months old or whatever, we were booking a crazy amount of calls. I can't remember the amount, and it was all coming from content, but we had an extremely low conversion rate. And naturally, as any business would, we were then kind of like, well, why is this? And we look back at all the calls and we're kind of like, this is where we're going wrong. And where we were going wrong is the fact that people coming to us and they just wanted our process. They were more interested in a process than the actual outcome of the process. And so when we would say to them, because we didn't have an offering that would facilitate this, hey, like, no, we're not going to actually run it for you. So we're going to run it for you, but we're not giving over the crown jewels. That's why we had such a low rate. But like once we actually started saying, okay, like, look, we will build this and run it for you and then you can have it afterwards. That was when it just skyrocketed in terms of a response rate. And so I would say it went from 50-50 to around like 80-90% in the direction of people just want to run it themselves and build in-house capabilities.
Talk to me about how that actually works for you as a business, because obviously you would assume that if you just give over the infrastructure and they run it themselves and they don't need you anymore, that there's a lot of churn and like you're losing out on a lot of value. Like, why does this work? Why is this a viable business model?
Yeah. Because uh to put it simply, the world moves very fast, especially in AI. So what works today is going to be completely different tomorrow. And everyone wants to stay on track. And so if someone invests in working with us to build this infrastructure, they are very, very, very much aware that this thing evolves over time. And that's exactly what we do. So part of the program that we have is that we have coaching calls. And every week we're sharing the stuff that's working in our campaigns and all the innovations that we're making. For example, at the moment, we're seeing a better performance when it comes to writing copy from using Claude, which is a ChatGPT competitor, instead of ChatGPT. And so, for comparatively the same price, it then becomes the better option. And so, what we would say to our clients is, look, this is performing better for us at the moment. And there's a chance that we might actually suggest to you to switch over to that. These are the benefits. And that knowledge alone is what they stick around for. And not to mention that it's a case where once we actually build the system for them, we also know how to get the most out of said system. So there is interest from their point of view to continuously work with us because they want to keep getting the most out of it. And I think that's why it works for us. In terms of like financially, how it changed for us, obviously the change in um, retainers were higher value on a recurring basis. However, and such is the nature of lead generation models, it's like if they something works out and they know it's working, they just take it in house because for them it's just a case where like they kind of see it as this: oh, that copy is working. I know who the ICP is, so this seems like a pretty easy way to just bring this in house and save a lot of money. So although you were getting more money per month in terms of revenue, it's like the churn was higher. And also, it's a case where the closing was a lot harder because, I mean, with what we're doing is a case where we're saying to you, look, this is going to be your system. You run it, you do everything. And so the costings for them is it works out a little bit better because they're kind of like, well, I mean, if this initial phase doesn't work, we could always just keep this and carry on running it for the next couple of months until we get ROI.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of, I think it's where people are shifting in general, is delivering more value up front, right? It's like the Hormozy, the Russell Brunson, like anyone that's creating a bunch of YouTube content. It's like, here are all the systems for free. You can go and do this yourself, or we can be there and help you with it as well, right? You're building more of that trust. How, like, it must be a lot easier to kind of sell that, not just on like a basis of it being an easier sell to them, but just that it's more relaxed as well, right? It's like you don't need to close them down to a 12-month contract as agencies usually try to do with people. And it's like, oh, well, we lose them, will the churn be high? It's like, no, we're going to deliver value. We're not going to ask anything more. And then if you want to stay on with us, you want to stay on with us. So it must make like a difference to your kind of mental state as well, that you're just way more relaxed in all of those processes.
Yeah, I think with the Switch, I found that I needed to be better, or I needed to be really good at fewer things. And so I was able to go deeper on those things because from my perspective, I thought to myself, okay, what am I good at? I'm good at teaching people at scale, hence why I was able to grow from uh, around 8,000 followers um, in December 2023 to now today where I'm at 31,000 followers. And I'm like, okay, so what was it that was making me good at that? And then I just kind of thought to myself, well, it was the education and stuff. I was just giving away a lot of crazy value. And then I was kind of like, well, this coaching stuff isn't too different from that. It's just a case where I'm just giving more and I'm available one on one to actually facilitate to give you even more value. And so the business completely changes. And we get a lot more lean because I mean, with a lead gen company, I don't think people understand how much goes into it. Like you need an appointment setter, you need someone to manage the inboxes, you need someone to do all the data, you need someone to be talking to the clients, you need to be someone to be doing this, that, and it gets quite complex. Hence why lead gen agencies have to charge what they do. And I think that this model and the coaching model just works a lot better for us.
Talk to me about that. How's your LinkedIn growth to over 30K been impactful for your inbound? How many people do you have in your inbox every single day being like, I want to use your services, let's book a call?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Quite honestly, I would say that 95, so we last year we booked around 700 calls. I would say that 95% of those started their journey through content. So I was posting consistently 5 times a week, 5 to 7 times a week. And then we would layer the outbound on top of that to kind of pick up anyone who hadn't actually made the move just yet. And a bit of a so that's how we were driving leads for the most part. And then it was a case where in December our kind of luck ran out where we took it way too much for granted. And basically, I think I got shadow banned, where my impressions dropped like 70, 80%. And that's when we started to look into other channels to be like, okay, well, how do we replicate all of this amazing free business that we were getting? And it kind of just came to the realization that nothing is free forever. You got to sometimes pay, and that's when we started to make the move into paid ads. And yeah, they're working well for us. They're a bit expensive. I don't know if you've heard, but yeah, LinkedIn ads are pretty damn expensive.
Yeah, it's something we've been looking at recently, but it's hard to make it work for a free newsletter. Even with the LTV down that funnel, it's difficult to make a LinkedIn ad work for that. Um, I'd love to jump into the actual process, the product itself. I'm not sure if you could share your kind of screen and kind of dive into how this actually works on the back end for me.
Okay, sure. So what we're looking at right now is a funnel, and we've got three parts to the top of the funnel. We've got LinkedIn content, we've got targeted lists, so with regards to outbound, and also automatic sales triggers, again, with regards to outbound and outreaching. And these are what make up the vast majority, well, I mean, the entirety of what we build for businesses. Now, the first part of this starts with LinkedIn content. Now, as I was just saying to you, This made up 95% of the funnel in terms of if people came across our content, most of the time they would book straight away. But even if they didn't, and then we messaged them via LinkedIn or email, is a case where they would say, "Oh, I've seen your content, so I now trust you. So let's actually dive in for a call." Now, with LinkedIn content, it's very important that you have a three-part approach, and every one of your posts should fall within these three categories. One, which is personal stories. And the whole point of personal stories is to give yourself or put a character behind yourself, show that you're a real person. You're not just someone just trying to flog whatever it is that you're trying to flog, and you have a bit of a personality. But most importantly, personal stories are an amazing way to subtly drop things which build your own credibility. For example, I used to work at Google, and when I was working at Google, I worked with some of the fastest growing agencies in the UK. Collectively, they spent around 12 million in ad spend with Google, and then from that, what I was able to learn was what made fast growing agencies. Now, today, as of today, um, um, our focus is on agencies and consultancies. It's who we can provide the most amount of value for. So, me talking about these personal stories or talking about my time at Google, they would read that and say, okay, he probably knows my niche, for example. Then the next part of this is giving away lead magnets. Now, these are the like kryptonite of how to actually drive a lot of book calls and activity around your brand. What it basically is like you giving away a piece of content or a resource or pack or whatever you want to call it, where like someone would have to pay for that otherwise. So, for example, what we might do is we might give a tutorial on exactly how you would set up the automations to scan your likes and comments and tell you who's your ideal customer persona. Because the value in knowing that is that you might be able to close your next deal for however much money. And for us, it costs us nothing to give that away. And you might be thinking, well, then they won't actually come to you. Honestly, most of the time people read this, it piques their interest and they're like, I don't even have time to do this, but I want it. So I'm going to reach out to Bjion and let him do it for me. And the art of this is to create something which people want, but then there's a science behind it as well. And the science is literally just to say in your caption, okay, like and comment on this to receive it. What then happens is that people will start to like and comment on it in an abundance, and it tricks the LinkedIn algorithm to be like, oh, this person has posted something that's super interesting and people are interacting with it. So we're going to give him some more views and boost it to a lot more people. And that's exactly what happens. And in that process, you get pushed to so many people outside of your network for basically nothing, apart from the knowledge you had to give away. Now, once you've done at the top of the funnel where you're talking about yourself, then you started to give away free value and free content and you've brought people into your network. Then the next part of this and the most obvious part of this is you need to bring home the bacon, which is you saying, okay, I do this. And then it's a case where people say, okay, I want that. And then they book the call. So what this looks like, and if you go to my LinkedIn, you'll see it. It's like loads of Loom videos. And I kid you not, these take me about 2-3 minutes to film. And I often do them in one take. And um, they're very kind of like slapped together. And I don't mean shoddy. I just mean like I literally just think, okay, I know what I'm going to talk about, put on the camera, and I go. And a lot of people like that authenticity because it doesn't seem rehearsed and they're not being sold to. And through this process of showing them whatever it is, is then a case where they try on the vision of having that. For example, if I'm showing them how to use AI to, I don't know, go through all of their LinkedIn connections and then tell them who is their ideal customer, they're kind of like, if I do that with my business and Bjion found 5% of his customers made up his connections, and I do 5% of my LinkedIn connections, this is how many customers I can expect. That's what they do in their head when you show them your process. And that is the basis of the LinkedIn content process. Now, the next part in what we do is it could be a personal story, it could be a lead magnet, or it could be a service specific demo, which is just showing you guys what I do. Um, It doesn't matter. But what we do is we then built an in-house tool. And on my screen is basically a Google spreadsheet. I've got one cell and I'm typing in web design strategies to increase your conversion rate. Then what happens is in another tab, we have three columns. The first column is LinkedIn templates from templates that we've seen go viral from other content creators. Then in the second column is an example of this. And in the third column, the AI mixes the template with the example and then the topic, which is the website conversion, web design strategies. And then what you have me doing now is scrolling through 60 odd different caption ideas that I can post. Now, the beautiful thing about this is if you're watching this video, or I mean, to be honest, even if you're listening to this, this happened in a matter of seconds. And it's a case where people go wrong in this is they just go into ChatGPT and say, could you make me some content ideas for my niche? But the problem is they're giving ChatGPT too much freedom and it's not doing it within a template. So what is happening here is we have a tried and tested framework for how to go viral on LinkedIn. Then you're filling it with your topic. And what you then do is you just copy and paste this stuff, put it into another Google Doc, and then you simply just tweak it to however you want. And that will reduce your content creation time by like 90%. And it will give you more time to do other stuff. For example, creating lead magnets, which is what actually drives the most amount of sales activity and volume. Now, what I'm now doing, I'm skipping back to the diagram of the funnel, and I'm going to go into the targeted list section. Now, quite simply, this is just a list of people who match your ideal customer persona. So, say, for example, I'm a web design agency and I'm going after dentists. All this targeted list would be is just a targeted list of dentists. And you might say to yourself, well, how did you get that? What you essentially are able to do is use AI to so what you initially do is you download all of these dentists from a database, and then you can use AI to go through every single individual and say, is this my ideal customer persona? Maybe their dentist isn't big enough by headcount. Maybe it's in a region which you don't want to service. The AI can make those decisions in a split second. And so what you're able to do is you can build these lists, and they should be between like 10 to 20,000 in terms of their size, because there, consider this. If you're only outreaching to 5,000 people per month in terms of doing a cold outreach campaign via email, that would still last you like 4 months where you don't actually have to do anything besides wait till someone replies because it's just trickling away in the background. And then the final part of us filling this funnel is the automatic sales triggers. Now, this is like the sexy part. This is what most people like the most. This is stuff where you're setting up almost like evergreen campaigns that never end. Because what they do is they look for a signal, for example, someone posting a job or visiting your website or commenting or liking your post. And then on a daily basis, you're getting all of these prospects filling your funnel for the AI to then do something with. So, for example, wouldn't imagine this if you and I went or I mentioned this example earlier, but imagine if you were able to set up a watch list for anyone who posts a job looking for a web designer, because you're a web development company and you could help them with their design. Imagine if you are the first person in their inbox saying, "We can help you with this." Or imagine that you are a recruiter and you are then able to outreach on autopilot to anyone who's looking for a particular job saying, "Hey, I can give you, I've got 5 candidates who match this role. Would you be interested in seeing them?" Now, if they respond and you don't have 5 candidates, just don't respond. But if they do, you now know that they are interested, and that's easy money for you, because what did you actually have to do to even get that lead? Nothing. You sat back and let the automation do all the work. Now, the next part of in this process, and this is the we're moving away from the upper part of the funnel into the AI bit. And what is shown on this diagram is 3 boxes. It says qualification, email enrichment, personalize, and upload, and they're all going from top to bottom. The first part in this process is the qualification process. Now, quite simply, what happens in this is that we get AI to make a dozen or so decisions on our behalf. So, what it would do is it would check, for example, actually, I'm going to show you an example right now. What I'm now looking at on my screen is a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet is in a platform called Clay, which is the architect of all of this AI type stuff. And what we're now looking at is a spreadsheet. And in the first column, there is a URL. This URL is a link to one of my posts. Okay. It's a LinkedIn link. Now, in a couple of columns down is then a email address or a name of the person who either liked or commented on that particular post. What it then shows in this row is that the AI then finds out where they work. It then finds out their job title. It then goes on to the decision stage where it checks their company and says, "Okay, are they the right type of person or company that we want to go after?" In our instance, we want to go after agencies and consultancies. So it makes that decision within a split second. Then it says, "Okay, what about their role? Is that the right role? Are they the right location? Are they a competitor? And do they pass the qualification?" And if they do, it then proceeds to then say, "Okay, we're going to personalize it like this based on the post that they liked or commented on. And then we're just going to do the outreach to them." And that happens on autopilot. No matter whether it's me sending the hiring manager from one of the job posts we're looking at, or one of the dentists, and we put it into that same, it will do the exact same process tens of thousands of times, and it will do it to the same quality every single time, which saves me from not having to go through and agonize through every single person. Say, okay, are they my ideal customer persona or not? Um, and then the next part of this is the email enrichment part. Now, we typically find someone's email address 80% of the time. And I won't bore you with the details, but it bounces between 21 different data providers, and then it pings the email address before it even sends out our real one, just to check if it's real. And then the final part is the personalize and upload. Now, this is where things get a bit scary to some people. So what we will do is we will check for 5 different data points, maybe sometimes 10. And what these data points might be is we will search through their company, their LinkedIn on LinkedIn, and we will try to find someone who's also a decision maker, or maybe their CEO. And we will say in our icebreaker, "Hi, John. Apologies if this isn't relevant to you. I wasn't sure whether you handled this or Jay." Now, I don't know who Jane is, but the AI knows who Jane is because it happens to be the head of sales within their company. And I'm reaching out to the CEO about something to do with sales. So the CEO is going to read that and he's going to be like, "Oh, they've done their research. So I might reply to this," or they're more likely to. Or it might be something like looking at who they recently brought on. So again, we can look into their company and say, who have they recently hired? And our icebreaker might be, hi, I saw that you recently brought on David and Matthew. So I assume that growth might be a focus for you. Or you could even say, I saw that you recently brought on two SDRs, Matthew and David, and I thought you might need help with onboarding them, which is what our tool can help you with. And that, in essence, is how you create a super personalized outbound strategy at scale. So just cycling back to when I was saying to you around when you outreach to people based on if they liked your post or the jobs or any of these targeted lists, is then a case where you don't have to be worrying about this, or you having to spend time going through and doing all of these random icebreakers. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. When you go onto someone's profile and you're like, what do I even say to make this not seem like it's sent to everyone? And the AI just does all of that for you. And now the final part of this is probably the most simple part of this whole funnel. We've moved on from the inputs, which is the targeted list, the LinkedIn content, the automatic sales triggers. We've now moved on for the middle part, which is the qualification, email enrichment, and personalize and upload. And then we're at the end, which is basically just a LinkedIn outreach or an email outreach. And you can do this so it's synchronized. So you can do this. So if someone replies on, let's say that we're outreaching on LinkedIn first, and then we want to outreach on email, and then we want to outreach on LinkedIn, and then we want to outreach on email. What the tool is able to do is that if someone replies on email, it will stop all the outreach on LinkedIn and vice versa. So the recipient truly feels like this has been a personalized effort when really I've done this across tens of thousands of people and they just would never know. But that in essence is what we do. And we typically do it for agencies and consultancies. And you might be asking why. And the reason why is because agencies and consultancies suffer from the feast and famine cycle the most. And what I mean by this is that what will happen to them is that they will do a sales push. They will then land a few leads. Might even close them. And let's say that they do close them. What will then happen? Because agencies and consultancies are so founder and people heavy, the whole focus of the company then gets dragged into delivery. What then happens is 2-3 months later, once the project is finished, they wake up one day and they're like, "Oh my god, we don't have anything else coming." And then there's a revenue drop. So they then do another sales push. And then it just repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself. And the only way to get out of it is to have something churning away in the background all the time. And the reason why, or the only way or what people used to do was obviously hire a sales rep. But the issue with that is then someone else to manage, and it's also costly. Whereas the AI is not costly, and you don't necessarily have to manage it in the true sense of the form. Like you're not sitting down on a Friday having a one-to-one meeting with the AI, unless it really misbehaves. But yeah, no, you get what I'm saying. So that's in essence what we do, and how we help agencies and consultancies.
That is an absolute mind-blowing amount of value and kind of speaks testament to exactly what you've been saying throughout this podcast about providing free education. Not many people would be willing to give a wide audience such a peek behind the curtain of how this all works. Like theoretically, someone could go and do this themselves. Now, the likelihood of that happening is probably unlikely. My question for you: what is the ideal fit for you as a customer to use this model? What is the best possible fit for this? What's a terrible fit? Like who would this not work for? And then who do you think that maybe you've not encountered, like as a business, as like a mode of operation, a type of business that would like benefit from this massively, but just like there hasn't been that partnership yet.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the worst fit and who this is not for. Um, this is not for companies who don't have any traction and they don't know who their customer is and they don't know um, they've never done anything outside of their network. Now, what I mean by that is they've never done ads. They've never done um content. They've never done I mean, and what I mean by that is that not saying never ever done content, but like not done it consistently. And the reason why it doesn't work for those people, this is probably not best for them, is because with outbound and also content, you have to have a solid grasp on who your ideal customer is. And the reason why I said that you can't just wake up on one day and say, okay, I know that we've never actually gone outside of our network, but like let's try this outbound stuff and let's see where it goes. Because the issue is that like you will just be going off in the wrong direction, just faster. And so, what the better way to do is first nail down from your referrals or whatever way you're getting um, traction at the moment, whether you can consistently get that same customer. And if you are going to do in outbound, you just try in a manual process just to start with. But once you have a good idea that okay, there's actually traction in those directions, then that's where it works the best. And I'll give you a couple of examples based on the companies that we've worked with. So we worked with a company based in Dubai, and they had they're a PR agency and they work on pay per performance basis, and they had been running ads for a couple of years, and they had around 150,000 opt-ins. And all of these people were sitting in their CRM, but they didn't know what to do with them because they didn't know who they were and they didn't know how their phone numbers or anything. So what we did is we used AI, and this is the scary part. All we needed was the person's email, and from that, we were able to find out their job role, their full name, where they worked, what location they were in the world, what location of the company, their work email, their personal email, and importantly, their phone number. So what we then did was gave back 98,000 phone numbers to this company, and they started booking 50 calls a day based on that. Because, and this is just a perfect example, if you already have a process which is working reasonably well and you need to go faster in that direction, then this is perfectly because that's essentially what AI does. It just sends you faster in a particular direction. So if I was to say who the dream company was or what the best type of companies are, sorry, it's companies with around 10 to 100 employees who um, know who their customer is, have track record of being able to get that same type of person. They have some process which are working, but they want to add fuel to that fire. Those are the best people that this is for.
Is there anyone that's on your hit list of contacts as a business model, as an individual, that you would love to get in contact with and work with and have this business model work for them, but it's not happened yet?
You know, I think that the people I would love to try and work with on this particular strat or using this with is actually business leaders who have a strong following on LinkedIn. So um people with I don't know 50 odd thousand people, and they're also service-based businesses because I know, and this is free game to anyone because I've already mentioned it in this. If you have a following, and to be honest, it doesn't even have to be that big, but obviously they have more followers, so it is going to be a big deal for them. But like being able to then use AI to go through their likes and comments and then nail down who exactly within their likes and comments is their ideal customer, And I just know that we'd be able to book calls for them like so easily. Because as I say, they've got that brand authority, they've got that reach. They now just need the automation piece to actually make that outreach for them.
I love it. With how advanced this already is, where do you see Navrio in 1 year's time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? Like, where does this get to?
Yeah. So our vision is just become the best company at teaching sales leaders how to integrate AI into their business. And to be honest, it doesn't have to be sales leaders. It can also be CEOs or to be honest, any service based business. We are extremely focused on the education piece and teaching as many people as we possibly can. And so that's where I see us in the next couple of years, just being known for being some of the best at teaching people how to use AI and automation in their business.
How do you think about yourself? Do you now think of yourself as an educator, an entrepreneur, a creator of an AI SaaS business? Like, how do you envision yourself with those terms?
Easily. Yeah, so easy question is I just see myself as a more of an educator now. Um, I think previously on the lead gen model is more like a entrepreneur, and I don't see myself anything like anywhere like lesser of an entrepreneur now. It's just I think that like educator for me feels like it encompasses um a lot more of what I do because entrepreneurship kind of leans into the idea that in order to help someone, I have to transact with them. When the vast majority of the people who probably interact with me don't ever transact with me, they just consume the content, which I'm happy for that to happen because it fits into the bigger the puzzle anyway. But I think like that's where I kind of see myself now.
Interesting. I have one more question on Navrio before I'd like to jump into a little bit about your background and throw you some hypotheticals, some curveball questions to have fun with. Who designed the branding and came up with a name because it fits so well and stands out really well, especially in the space of like AI SDRs? It always captures my eye.
Yeah, yeah. So really appreciate that. I actually came up with it because I, in a previous lifetime, was a designer, and so I started my career, if you want to call it that, as a freelancer. I taught myself how to do design when I was 15, and then I started freelancing on the internet, and um, I was designing well up to 2017, so about 8 years ago, which is incredibly scary to say, because I ran a design agency, and I feel like it's just never left me the love for design, and I think I just poured it into to Navrio when I first created it, and the Navrio name. Funny you should say that you like it because honestly, it's just from years of experience of because I this is my first rodeo, and the worst part of creating any business is actually creating the name. And firsthand, I've created businesses where like we've come up with a name, spent months on it, agonizing, and then we set it up, and then we get a letter saying, "Hey, this is quite like ours," and then you then have to change it, and then so maybe the art of Navrio being a good name just born out of fear of having to or being sued. So I just came up with something which I knew like did so many Google searches like there's nothing out here called this. So that's how it basically came out. I'd love to say that there was like some really curated process, but it was probably just born out of fear.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the candor there, and it's definitely something I notice across all of your past ones, and maybe just this is my Scottishness coming out that I can't pronounce things. But Clayo, the previous one, Hugh Digital before that, um, there's like this kind of streak of like a little bit abstract, but a bit hard to pronounce. How exactly do I pronounce this?
Yeah, 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 exactly. So that's something I've been trying to get better at because, like, honestly, when we created Hue Digital, I thought that was so obvious. But then when I kept hearing people say it, I was like, oh, God, no. And then it was the case where with Clay, I was like, all right, this is so damn obvious. But then people would pronounce it Cleo, Cleo, and then I was kind of, oh shit, I've done it again. And then like Navrio was the one which kind of felt like, okay, I'm not getting too many people saying it, but then a few times I've heard people say like Navrio or Navreo, and I'm like, oh gosh, here we go again. But anyway, no, I actually don't mind. I think it's probably also born out of the fact that my name in itself is actually quite abstract. So maybe I just don't care. I just love these abstract names.
If I'm honest with you, I had to watch a YouTube video of you beforehand to make sure I was pronouncing your name correctly before we came on the podcast.
The funny thing is that people will actually say to me for like months, like in Dubai, a lot of my close friends that I go out with, um, they pronounce it Bijon, and people who actually know how to pronounce my name will be like, "Why'd you call him that?" And then they'll say to me like, "Why do you let them call you that?" And it's just because like my mind doesn't even register anymore that people are mispronouncing my name because I'm so used to it. Now I just let them do it, and it comes to a point that it just sticks. So then no one actually knows how to pronounce my actual name because quite honestly, I know some people get offended of it and like they insist that you pronounce their name wrong, and they are well in their right to do so. But I just don't care. I literally just don't care.
Yeah, I think there's something in there as well that like the difficulty of your name and the business's names opens up a bit of a discussion, right? It does spark more interest that there's like maybe some complexity just to how you say that, and it's a bit different from anything you've seen before. That definitely adds more appeal and interest to it as well. And so I think it's an additive rather than a reductive. Um, I want to touch on this just quickly, so you've got quite an impressive background between being an intern at Google at 17, an associate accountant strategist at Google, launching a design agency at Hugh Digital, launching Clio at 25 years old, raising £285,000. You mentioned how you got this background in design, and I assume from like each one of these businesses, you take a different lesson, you learn a different thing. There's probably something that stands out about each of those experiences. And I was wondering if you could just try give me one thing from each of those experiences that you've kind of taken forward.
Yeah, that is probably one of the best questions I've had on a podcast. So the first one was self-made, which was a clothing brand I created when I was 17 with my best friend from sixth form college. And we did I think that was my first lesson in content creation and the power of having an audience. So my business partner actually had a really big audience on Tumblr. Most people may not know what that platform is, but it was kind of like Facebook back in the day. And we that's how we've got our first customers, just by posting designs and stuff like that. And the lesson that I learned from that was, in fact, the reason it started to deteriorate in in traction was because we built a brand based on a certain look and an aesthetic, and it was quite cartoony, quite playful, quite relaxed. And what happened at the time is that both myself and my business partner had our own kind of teenage revelation where we were kind of like, this is who we want to be like. And funny enough, it was ASAP Rocky we wanted to be like. And his aesthetic was so different from ours. And or what we'd been building. And we were kind of like, we don't even enjoy doing this anymore. But like, so let's just move over the brand. And people turned on us like quite significantly, and people didn't like the new look. And I think the first lesson I learned was that like not to change what is working just because you don't like it anymore. The reality is that business is just sometimes quite boring, and it's quite um uh emotionless. You have to just do stuff that you don't really want to do sometimes if you want to make the numbers. So that was the first lesson. Then, Google, I joined at 19, and I think what I learned there was that um, I think this was more of a spiritual learning. I realized then and there that I didn't ever want to work in a um a relaxed environment. So in Google, it was almost impossible to get fired. And I that sounds crazy, but it was impossible. You could literally do whatever you wanted, but because of the culture, one, it wasn't a confrontational culture. It was very soft. And even if you missed your target or like you performed really badly, you would never get fired because it just wasn't that type of environment. The irony is, it was very hard to get in, but also very, very, very hard to get out. In terms of being pushed out. And I was 21 when I went full time there because when I was 19, I was an intern. And it sounds so spoilt saying this, but like I was well paid for my first job out of university. I had like there was like bean bags and free food, and you could go for a massage any time of the day. There was a swimming pool in the office. It was literally the best working space on earth. But when I decided to quit because I was just so fed up with it, I was happier in the 5 months, 6 months after I left, 100% broke because I was starting new digital. Anxiety attacks all the time because I didn't know whether I was gonna if I just passed up on the biggest opportunity of my lifetime staying at Google. And all my clients who said that they were gonna work with me whilst I was at Google when I was gonna start this agency, then just disappeared. I was still happier then because I felt alive. Um I felt like it was almost like gambling, the gambler's kind of like thrill. Yes, you have the lows, but you have the highs, and it's that what kept you going. Whereas, like when I was at Google, I was just stuck in the middle, and that was the biggest lesson I learned is that like I from then just knew that even if I had all the golden handcuffs in the world, like money and all that kind of stuff, that I knew that wasn't going to make me happy. So I could just kind of just brush that aside and knew that 9 to 5 just wasn't for me. And then I went to Hue Digital, and Hue Digital, was a design agency, and that's where I was working with my business partner from when I started, self-made. And I think what I learned in that whole, um, era was the importance of proactiveness in, getting sales in business. I think that, um for the first part, which made it extremely difficult for us, we were too reliant on our network. Then when we started doing content, that's when things started to develop and move on. And then what happened was it then pivoted into Clio when we fundraised, and Clio then we then started to build that. And Clio was a social commerce app. And what that basically means is it was like a shopping app, a little bit like Pinterest. But imagine if you could create a Pinterest board, and then if anyone bought anything from your Pinterest board, then you would actually get a commission from it. Now this might be taken for granted today with like TikTok shopping and stuff like that, but this was like in 2020 when like that wasn't like Instagram shops didn't even exist then. TikTok shops didn't exist then. Um, and so um we created that app with my co-founder from Hugh Digital as well as one other person. And the biggest lesson I learned from that, which is still fresh in my mind, is um stick to what you're good at and stay focused on fewer things. Because I think that what happened in that is because we weren't getting the traction that I felt that we should be getting, we changed the idea like every day. And we incrementally got closer and closer and closer, but like the damage was done after every single time that we pivoted. But I would say that in hindsight, was it ever going to be anything? I mean, like, were we really going to be able to compete with like TikTok and all of that kind of stuff? So I try not to beat myself up too much about that. But yeah, those are the lessons that I learn across those various different ventures.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a super valuable and interesting thing for maybe people that are just starting their entrepreneurial journey, regardless of what age they are. Maybe they're C-suite executives right now. A lot of our listeners are. Maybe they're kind of like young college students. Is that not every business that you do, not every venture that you do, not every project that you do needs to be the final boss, needs to be the final project, needs to be the thing that's going to kick off and make you millions of pounds or dollars for US listeners, which is the majority of them. I speak to friends, colleagues, people I know, and it's always a question that people ask is, well, like, how do I get started and stuff? I'm like, well, you just gotta like not put as much pressure on yourself for like the one thing that you do just now to be the thing that makes you successful. And I mean, it's like I can only speak so much from what I've done at 25, but if you're listening to the likes of like Sam Parr and Shan Puri on My First Million, they say the same thing. It's like people who stay in the game for long enough, for 10, 15, 20 years, 90% of them will become successful and achieve what they want to achieve at some point, right? They may have went through 2 ventures or 5 ventures or 10 ventures, but it is a matter of just like consistency and showing up and trying and trying and trying again. And if there's one thing that I could get out to people would be that, like, we all start at different things. I used to write on Medium back in the day. I had a podcast. I used to sell photography online. I worked out in Australia as a bartender. Like, I've done a bunch of random stuff to get to where I am today. And like all of those little things taught me little niche skills that I've taken forth into what I do now as the operations manager of a huge company, right? That's doing millions of dollars a year. So it's humble beginnings for most people.
Yeah, so what I would add to that is I bet like for you, when you started these ventures, I mean everyone wants to be successful at every venture they do. I mean that's the whole point. You start, you don't start to fail. But I think the failures that you would have, or the obstacles you would have had along the way, you would never change it for anything else because there's some lessons you have to learn. Um, and there's no other way. I remember when Cleo fell apart, and my main investor who helped me through the whole process, I was on a phone call with him, and obviously I was super, super beat up. And he was saying, "Look, um, there's some lessons in life that you cannot read in a book. You have to do it firsthand. But it's these lessons like you'll never ever have to learn again because they will hit you so hard that like you will never forget them and they will make you far better as an entrepreneur." But so I know what you said in terms of like, if there's anyone out there that's like, um, when should I start or how should I start? Just start. Like that is actually the most important thing. And once you actually get into the ring, just never stop. Yeah, that's what I would just add on to yours.
I have one last question. I've been asking every guest. I asked Alex Banks this yesterday. I asked Eric Jorgensen this a couple weeks ago. It's been an interesting variation of responses, but when I ask it, I'm not going to give any further context. So just take the question, face value, and make of it what you make of it. Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, it started off in the beginning as to to prove my potential because I felt like when I was younger, I had not to say I don't have them now, but like, I had a lot of mentors who put a lot of faith in me and saw a lot of potential in me. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to fulfill that potential, and I wanted to fight desperately to win it. Almost like validation of that initial faith. And I think like as I got older, I felt like, and it happened quite naturally. It wasn't kind of like a eureka moment. I think it was more just the fact that I felt like it didn't feel right that I was only doing this to be validated by someone else. And then it just kind of got it internalized where I was like, I know what I'm gunning towards. I know where like my abilities lie and I know where I want to take this. how close can I get it to there in what space of time? And it became like a massive competition with myself, just keep on going. And I feel like that feels like a more healthy way to sustain that ambition. And also, I just love it. Like, quite frankly, I don't know really know what else I would do. And don't get me wrong, people close to me are always around me saying, "Look, you need to spend um, more time chilling out or disconnecting," and all those things are absolutely correct. And I know deep down is what I need to be doing. But there's something in me that also just gets so much entertainment from doing what I do, working with the amazing team that I have, that just keeps me wanting to do it even more and even more and even more. The thrill of just working together with other people within my team to win at something, we all share in those wins. And I think like there's few things in life which you can get the same amount of feelings or type of feelings um, on a daily basis. There's nothing really comes close. And I think like the fear of losing that is also why I would probably never quit as well. Um, and I think like that's what gets me up in the morning every single day to just keep wanting to go.
Bjion, I want to thank you for your time. If people want to learn more about you and what you do, how did they go about getting in contact?
Yeah, so I'm most active on LinkedIn. I'm gonna start YouTube in a couple of months, but like LinkedIn's where I'm at. So um just search my name. I'm sure it'll be in the description of the podcast. And yeah, you'll find me. And you'll know it's me because there's going to be no one else called Bjion Henry in the world, thanks to the way that my name's spelled. So you should be able to find me quite easily.
Awesome, Bjion. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you.